When are we going to stop taking went to Eton as a qualification to run the country?
Gervais just said what many of us have been thinking about Keir Starmer, and it's causing chaos online. The comedian's scathing critique has gone viral, with people calling it the harshest political commentary of the year. Starmer's team is reportedly scrambling to manage the fallout, but the question is, can they bounce back? Imagine this. Gervais, the guy known for his no-holds-barred takedowns, sets his sights on Keir Starmer. It's like a comedy show with real political consequences. Sure, we've seen Ricky roast plenty of people before, but this time, it's on another level. Starmer has only been in office for a few months, and let's be honest, things haven't been going great. He's stumbling through his role like he's navigating a political minefield, and it's hard not to cringe at times. Then comes Ricky. He's not just any celebrity taking a jab. This is a man who's built a career on saying what everyone else is too scared to voice. And when he sets his sights on Starmer, you know it's going to be big, though probably not in a good way for Starmer. Ricky doesn't hold back, calling out Starmer for what he sees as corrupt behavior. Social media is exploding, with people eagerly dissecting every word. It's brutal, it's entertaining, and for Starmer's team, it's a PR nightmare.
When are we going to stop taking went to Eton as a qualification to run the country? I mean, now. So that's why I'm doing this as well, because I've noticed all around, there's a lot of annoyance and frustration, totally justified as well, misinformation, anger. But I think the next pandemic is going to be like anxiety and depression, God knows how it affects like teenagers who have had their, some of the best years of their life, sort of.
Dear Prime Minister, the so-called champion of the little guy is renting out his £2 million home while enjoying the perks of Downing Street. Hypocrisy much? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Here's why this is such a big deal. Gervais is pulling back the curtain on the glaring disconnect between what Keir Starmer claims to stand for and how he actually behaves. And let me tell you, that gap isn't just big, it's as wide as the English Channel.
Tribute to Jeremy Corbyn, who's a friend as well as a colleague.
You wouldn't call Jeremy Corbyn a friend?
No. We have to make the case for freedom of movement. We don't want open borders. Freedom of movement has gone and it's not coming back.
Cutting off power, cutting off water.
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. I was not saying that Israel had the right to cut off water, food, fuel or medicine. Wounded by the media, the Sun in this city, a hurt for this city. And I certainly won't be giving any interviews to the Sun during the course of this campaign.
Did you write an article for some newspaper the other day? Surely that's not going to gain you any support across the Northwest.
Would you write for them again, Sir Keir?
I would do, yeah.
Can you guarantee that under your leadership, the 2019 Labour commitments to nationalise water, energy, rail, the Royal Mail, they'll all be in Labour's next election manifesto?
I've made that commitment.
Will you nationalise the big six energy companies, yes or no?
No.
No, you will not.
By the Home Secretary was the wrong decision, and I think it was a rushed decision.
When are we going to stop taking went to Eton as a qualification to run the country?
Gervais isn't here for the political fluff. He's cutting through the nonsense and getting straight to the point. No fancy words, no spin, just raw honesty. And honestly, that's exactly what people are craving right now. We're all fed up with politicians saying one thing and doing another. What makes this even more fascinating is that Ricky isn't a political expert or opposition leader. He's a comedian. Yet somehow, he's doing a better job of holding Keir Starmer accountable than the actual opposition. Crazy, isn't it? It's like Ricky has become the voice of the people, saying what we're all thinking, just with a lot more swearing and a much bigger audience. And that's why this matters. Ricky's not just cracking jokes. He's calling out the hypocrisy we see every day in politics. He's doing it in a way that's both hilarious and brutally honest, which feels like exactly what we need right now. Remember when politicians at least pretended to stand by their principles? Those days seem long gone. Take Keir Starmer, for example, the self-proclaimed champion of the working class. Somehow, he's become part of the very problem he claims to fight against. Here's the deal. While Starmer lives it up in Downing Street, he's renting out his £2 million home in North London. Yep, you heard that right. And he's pocketing between £3,000 and £5,000 a month from it. Every single month.
To live in their spare homes. Oh, no, sorry, my mistake. They're profiting off the fact that you now pay for them to live on Downing Street by letting out their spare houses. Easy mistake to make. The Telegraph reports that the Prime Minister is now a landlord. It's believed that the home that he bought for £650,000 in 2004 is now worth a cool £2 million. And he could be making between £3,000 to £5,000 a month from rent.
Middle of a housing crisis, people are struggling to find affordable places to live. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party and supposed champion of the working class, is profiting from the very system he's meant to be fixing. The hypocrisy is staggering. Let's break it down. Starmer has owned a property in Kentish Town for 20 years. He bought it in 2004 for £650,000, paid off the mortgage just last year, and now rents it out for up to £5,000 a month. Thanks to London's skyrocketing housing market and some renovations, that property is now worth £2 million. Yet he's living rent-free in Downing Street while cashing in on the rental income. Ricky Gervais called it out perfectly. Starmer claims to understand the housing crisis, but he's part of the problem. And it's not just him. Other Labour members are doing the same thing, renting out their properties while enjoying subsidized housing. It's a pattern that's hard to ignore, and people are starting to see Starmer in a very unflattering light. He talks a good game about standing up for ordinary people, but his actions tell a different story. Ricky didn't stop at housing. He's also exposing Starmer's love for freebies, and trust me, it's a scandal in itself. Turns out, Starmer has been gifted more than any other MP since 2019, raking in over £160,000 worth of perks. That includes nearly £40,000 in football tickets to Premier League and Arsenal matches, luxury accommodations, designer glasses, and high-end workwear, most of it from big donors like Lord Ollie. Here's where it gets dodgy. MPs are supposed to declare gifts and donations within 28 days, but Starmer has been accused of missing deadlines. When confronted, his defense was laughable. All MPs get gifts. Sure, but not to this extent. It raises serious questions about conflicts of interest. How can Starmer be trusted to hold big business and donors accountable when he's taking handouts from them? Ricky's takedown has struck a chord with the public. People are sick of politicians saying one thing and doing another, and Starmer is just the latest disappointment. He promised to tackle the housing crisis, yet rents are through the roof. He vowed to fight for working people, but his lifestyle tells a different story. And Ricky isn't done yet. This is just the beginning. Starmer's reputation is on shaky ground, and with more broken promises and scandals waiting to be exposed, things are only going to get worse.
Emergency situation now where millions of families are simply not going to be able to pay their bills this autumn if we don't do something about it. Under our plan, fully costed, every single penny will go on keeping those prices frozen and not allowing them to go up. So every single penny is going precisely every penny to stopping those bills so that every family, every household, the crossings of the channel, nobody should be making that crossing, and we absolutely have to deal with it. So on that issue, we're very, very clear. I've always said, in the end, the only way to deal with is to break the criminal gangs that are driving this. They've been driving this as a vile trade, making huge amounts of money, and they've got to be broken, which is why I've always said we should beef up the National Crime Agency. They can work cross-border with a specialist unit.
Clear, we will not raise tax for working people. So that means we will not raise income tax, national insurance or VAT, because all of our plans are fully costed and fully funded, and none of them require tax rises over and above the ones that we've already announced. But look, no, we're not going to austerity. I ran a public service for 5 years. We are not returning to austerity. What we want to return to to is growth in the economy. We had that under the last Labour government when our public services were working far, far better than they are now. So we need to get to growth in our economy. That starts by stabilising our economy, because there's been chaos in our economy. It's cost people across the country, whether that's their mortgage or the cost of everyday things in the shops and the things that they need to do. We can't go on like that.
Starmer's renting out his £2 million home while people are struggling to find affordable housing. Talk about being out of touch. But it doesn't stop there. Let's talk about the migrant crisis. Starmer made big promises about addressing this issue, yet his actions tell a different story. Instead of solutions, we're seeing vague statements and little follow-through. Meanwhile, the crisis continues to escalate, leaving communities stretched thin and vulnerable people stuck in limbo. Ricky Gervais didn't hold back here either, highlighting the disconnect between Starmer's words and actions. It's yet another example of a leader who claims to care but seems more focused on appearances than results.
Meeting here today, the European political community, that's been a major feature, which is how do we take down the gangs that are running this vile trade of smuggling.
Grand plan to fix everything. A new border security command with some extra funding. Sounds impressive, right? But come on.
That's why we rightly committed at the last election to get rid of tuition fees.
What about university tuition fees then? Will you remain committed to scrapping them in
They're
your first
all
term?
pledges, Andrew. So the answer to these questions is yes.
So university tuition fees being scrapped will be in a Starmer manifesto.
The Labour government, as you know, has ended up with unemployment higher at the end than they started. So I wouldn't go lecturing on crashing the economy. You do that every time you're in government, without exception.
I would be very careful about trashing other people's economic record. Let me let basics.
Meanwhile, Labour loyal
17,500 migrants have reached Britain since the election. It's a 16% increase from last year. People are still literally swimming across the channel. The economy Starmer promised to boost it, but it's still stagnant, let me be. Nearly half of voters are against the tax increases in the latest budget. Not exactly the growth Starmer promised, is it? And don't even get me started on public services. Starmer said he'd improve them, but where's the proof? It's like his promises have disappeared into thin air.
To advanced OECD economies, the UK is forecast to finish last. That is 38th out of 38. Now, all industrialised economies have had to face COVID and the consequences of Russia's illegal war. Yet our country is trailing behind because of conservative choices and conservative failure. There is an alternative. So why doesn't the Chancellor match Labour's ambitions for British industries in hydrogen, insulation, carbon capture, solar, nuclear and wind power to create new jobs here?
We were already talking to CEOs and others about how we run towards that target. If we'd started on this road 10 years ago, we wouldn't be reliant on oil and gas in the way we are. And renewables are 9 times cheaper, and it means that we are not then in this unequal relationship with other countries, particularly who have human rights issues that are of concern and which we call.
Ricky Gervais just said what many of us have been thinking about Keir Starmer, and it's causing chaos online. The comedian's scathing critique has gone viral, with people calling it the harshest political commentary of the year. Starmer's team is reportedly scrambling to manage the fallout, but the question is, can they bounce back? Imagine this. Ricky Gervais, the guy known for his no-holds-barred takedowns, sets his sights on Keir Starmer. It's like a comedy show with real political consequences. Sure, we've seen Ricky roast plenty of people before, but this time, it's on another level. Starmer has only been in office for a few months, and let's be honest, things haven't been going great. He's stumbling through his role like he's navigating a political minefield, and it's hard not to cringe at times. Then comes Ricky. He's not just any celebrity taking a jab. This is a man who's built a career on saying what everyone else is too scared to voice. And when he sets his sights on Starmer, you know it's going to be big, though probably not in a good way for Starmer. Ricky doesn't hold back, calling out Starmer for what he sees as corrupt behavior. Social media is exploding, with people eagerly dissecting every word. It's brutal, it's entertaining, and for Starmer's team, it's a PR nightmare. Our Prime Minister, the so-called champion of the little guy, is renting out his £2 million home while enjoying the perks of Downing Street. Hypocrisy much? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Here's why this is such a big deal. Ricky Gervais is pulling back the curtain on the glaring disconnect between what Keir Starmer claims to stand for and how he actually behaves. And let me tell you, that gap isn't just big, it's as wide as the English Channel.